Meeting's in session.
All right.
Thank you guys for attending. We always start out with introductions. My name is John Bly. I head up the Engineering Contractors Association and I'm chair of this wonderful committee. So we'll go around this way. Rick?
I'm Rick Butman, appointee of the League of Women Voters of Sonoma County.
Dennis Harder, representing Sonoma County Alliance.
Steve Bertlebell, representing the Sierra Club.
Tom Banning, District 3.
Jerry Glazer for the North Bay Electric Auto Association.
Want me to go ahead? Hi, I'm Rob Sprinkle with the City Santa Rosa Traffic Engineering.
Peter Parada, I'm civil engineer with the city of San Rosa.
We'll keep it at the table first. Keep it
Oh,
around here.
Carol Taylor, North Bay Organizing Project.
Eris Weaver, Executive Director, Sonoma County Bicycle Coalition.
Mark Hale, Building Industry Association.
Musa Bessie, Santa Rosa Chamber.
Tom Conlon, Sonoma County Conservation Council.
Mark Soyland, District 2.
All right, let's go to the back row. James, you lead it off, please.
James Cameron, Sonoma County Transportation Authority, Regional Pilot Protection Authority. Chris Barney, Brandon Pear, SCTA, RCPA.
Peter Rivera, SCTA, RCPA.
Shauna Gauze, SCTA, RCPA. Serena Wilson, City of Santa Rosa. Michelle, City of Santa Rosa.
Desiree Perez, City of Santa Rosa.
Dana Craig, SCTA, RCPA.
Ross Cordon, SCTA, RCPA. Drew Nichols, SCTA, RCPA.
All right. And who, I can't see very well. So who do we have up on our screen remotely, please?
Adam Garcia, data analyst with SCTA RCPA.
It's right next door.
Is he? Yes, you can hear him talking. All right, well, thank you very much for coming. We've got, looks like a pretty full packet because of the presentation. So we'll get right into any public comment on items not on the regular agenda. Seeing none, we'll go to administrative items, and that's the approval of the February 26th meeting minutes. And I know that at least one person's read them, but hopefully we've read those meeting minutes and we have a motion to approve as written. Motion? Second. Any discussion, corrections, omissions? You good?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Did I hear the motion from Dennis Harder and second from Vice Chair Lawson?
Yep. Okay, all those in favor of approving the minutes as noted? Aye. Any nays? Any abstentions? One abstention. It's not been here last month.
Not here.
Okay.
Not qualified.
All right, we're on to Rob. Well, let's see. Who's going to introduce Rob? Shauna, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As we do each month, there is we have the City of Santa Rosa, which is one of our Measure M project sponsors, here to present their projects that they receive Measure M funds for. And with that, I will just hand it over to Rob.
That was basically my introduction. So we're gonna go through, we have 4 projects today to go through. And we have representatives and the project managers for each project to help answer questions and go through their slides for their projects that they're in charge of. And so we're gonna start that with Peter Parada, who is the project manager for the Fulton Road project.
All right. Hi, I'm Peter. This is an overview of the Fulton Road Improvements Project. Oh, yeah, sorry. Yeah, it's okay. This project consists of reconstruction and widening of a 1-mile stretch of roadway from Guerneville to Pioneer, as you can see in yellow there. During this project, we've recently been dealing with some roadway repairs. There was an article that came out this past Sunday due to portions of the project not meeting our spec. And at this point, the project is approximately 93% complete. Here's a typical cross-section of the project. We took the sidewalks from 4 feet to 6 feet, if you look on both sides. It also increased the distance between pedestrian traffic from 3 feet to 14 feet. With all the high school students around this area, I think that's a really important thing to note. And then we also increased the bike lanes from 3 feet to 6 feet.
Could I ask you to just speak a smidge louder?
Yeah.
And maybe
Move
move
the
the mic
mic
closer
up.
to your mouth.
Thank you. Sorry about that.
Can I lift this up?
There we go.
Okay, and then for LID, we did a roughly 27,000 square feet of LID bioretention area, which is where that tree is, to help recharge the groundwater table. And then we chose to go with roller compacted concrete for this project. We did roughly 9,000 cubic yards. The reason we went with RCC, which stands for roller compacted concrete, was to reduce the required thickness of the roadway, allow for faster reopening for driveways for pedestrian or homeowners along that stretch of roadway. Increase the life expectancy and reduce the overall cost of the project. So for this project, there were 4 retaining walls. This is the most notable one, which is retaining wall 4. This wall is 350 feet. We needed this wall to widen the road. It's 350 feet in length. It had 49 drilled piles that extended down to 25 feet. So it's a
Wow.
pretty big and extensive wall. This is what RCC looks like when it's being placed up in the upper left corner. So it comes out more like an asphalt rather than concrete, but it hardens just like a normal concrete. So yeah, that's kind of what it looks like. And then the lower right is just the grade with new curb and gutters. Here's a curb ramp being built. There were 47 curb ramps installed or upgraded to ADA standards across the project. This kind of shows the road partially built, but mainly that LID portion of it. So when the project's complete, there'll be trees planted in there. It'll be nice and green. And that kind of shows how far away from vehicles the pedestrians are. Rather than prior to this, they were right next to the road and a portion of this didn't even have a sidewalk. This shows some permeable concrete. So that allows water to go through the concrete and into the LID area. And then down in the lower left, there's kind of an alternate design where there's curb cuts that allows the water to go into the LID area. And then it gets filtered and then recharges the groundwater. Now to the money. So for this project, Measure M, we had $8.7 million. And then phase 2, there's 500,000 allotted, which is in a feasibility study right now. This kind of shows the schedule that we've gone through. So it's been about 8 years to get to this point, and we're at 93% complete. So we're coming up to a close. And then here's the cost breakdown for each development phase of the project. And at this time, we have been fully reimbursed for all of our costs. And I think that wraps it for me.
You want to take questions
Yeah, I was gonna.
as we go or at the end?
Questions doesn't go, so.
I think, yeah, that's.
Don't know what you're getting into, but
Well.
give it a shot.
Well,
Go ahead. I think Rick was up first.
You didn't say anything about what we've just been reading in the Press Democrat the last few days about a lot of this concrete having been torn out and replaced. You didn't say anything about that?
I mentioned right at the opening, we're proceeding with repairs. But I can touch more on it if you'd like. So essentially, our contractor proceeded with the RCC and most of it didn't meet our spec. So they had grade that was going the wrong way, so it was draining into the road. Some of the thickness didn't meet our spec. So all that has to be torn out. Another portion of it was the road it's called raveling, where it kind of just degrades slowly over time from vehicle traffic. And so one of the intersections actually looked like it just had gravel all over the place because the road was just falling apart, and that was due to their installation being incorrect. And so we've kind of been fighting back and forth, and it's been a huge ordeal. And this is my first construction project for the city, so it's been a big learning experience.
Good one to cut your
Yeah,
teeth off.
it's been great. I didn't even start it. I didn't design it. I just picked it up right when all this started happening, but I know it's taught me a lot, so.
We're not paying for this, right? The
No,
contract
correct. This is all on the contractor's dime.
Is the road profile cross-section, is it the same as what's north of Piner, just north of Piner? Is it same width of lanes, bike lanes, et cetera, curb to curb?
I believe north is, I don't think the bike lanes are 6 feet wide. I think they're 5-foot bike lanes north of there.
Okay,
And there is not sidewalk on the west side.
and these are 6, right?
Yes.
And that includes the, what's your term?
Garden
Garden
pan.
pan? Okay, and that's
So there's a 4-foot clear, yeah,
your 4-foot clear. of that.
yeah, 4 foot of concrete to right on.
And 45 mile per hour speed limit?
Currently, yes.
Well, when you're done on this segment,
So there's,
by the high school?
right, so there's that's the 25-mile-an-hour zone for school. But there is also a bill that was passed, Assembly Bill AB 43. And as of July 1st, we'll be able to modify the speed limits on, and we picked actually 82 segments throughout the city to lower the speed limits on. I believe that segment is one that will be lowered.
Okay,
So that's why I said currently.
right. Thank you.
Thank you, Jerry.
Yeah, and 2 questions. Is the same concrete that was used on the southern portion, Bolton? It's different.
No, that was PCC. So that's
Okay.
just regular Portland cement.
And the question I asked the last time around, is it possible to use low carbon concrete for roadways?
Yes. And that's what we're using.
And that
RCPA
what
is
you're
actually,
using?
yeah.
Yeah.
it's a-
Okay, good. That I wanted to find out,
Yes,
because I knew
yes.
that was starting to show up in the Bay Area.
We've actually had a spec in the city of Santa Rosa for quite a while to use, I believe, 25% fly ash or slag in our materials.
Okay.
And this uses up to 50% fly ash.
And another interesting about RCC is that, well, it just cement in general, I feel like, or concrete, it's a lighter color, so it reduces the heat
Yeah.
within that area, which is it's a nice.
Thank you.
Yeah, a little tricky when you have to pull it back up. Starts to impact the carbon accounting, but
Yeah. true.
I'm wondering if you have good baseline data for speeds currently in that area, and if you have any plans to go back later after the project is finished to see how the new road design impacts travel speeds regardless of whether it's posted or not.
So we do survey our streets every 7 years. We do speed surveys on them to establish the speed limits. We use the 85th percentile to do that. And if you're familiar with that, that's 85% of the vehicles are traveling at that speed or less, which means 15% is going over that speed. So that's what we use to set their speed limits. And this bill that is coming through actually is allowing us to go much longer between surveys. So we'll be able to reset the speed limit at a 5-mile-an-hour reduction to 40 miles an hour. And I don't think we have to resurvey it then until 14 years after that.
Thank you.
Musa?
I have 2 questions, in fact, about follow-up on the PD questions. Who does the inspection, for this project? Is it the city or do you have a consultant? These problems that you mentioned, they were discovered, during work, or are they recently discovered?
So we have a consultant inspector. We have a consultant inspector, but we also go out and check the site periodically.
So the other part of the question, did you discover these problems during construction or recently?
It was during construction, so kind of towards the beginning, we noticed some issues and the contractor continued to reassure us that everything was going to be great. And we can't really tell them to stop, so we kind of have to let them continue progressing. And then, I mean, portions of the road are fine, so like they'd kind of have a bad day and then go good, and it'd be fairly well. And then towards the end, we diamond grind it, and they assured us that diamond grinding would relieve all of our concerns again, which it did not. And now we're we're dealing with, yeah, having to rip it out. But we warned them multiple times that, hey, this doesn't look like it's gonna work. And they kept reassuring us that it would come through.
Okay, my second question about, you did not show us where is phase 1 and phase 2. Where is phase 2 in this project? Yeah.
Phase
On the
two,
map, like,
It's really small in
the bottom.
the bottom right.
It's the interchange of Fulton and Highway 12.
oh, that's the one.
That's phase two.
Okay, thank you.
I've got a quick question. I can get to Mark. Because the first stretch seemed to be pretty successful using PCC, what's the benefit to going with the roller compacted, and how did that come about as the engineering choice for the next phase?
So that was before I was even at the city, but my understanding is it's mostly because of all the driveways. So roller compacted concrete, you can allow traffic on it much sooner. And with all the residents living there, I mean, our lab manager talked about getting people golf carts to try to like shuttle them to their cars. So that was kind of the issue there, from my understanding. Also, it saved money. It was supposed to save money. It's not costing us.
It's supposed to be done faster.
But yeah, if the product is fine, they use it in a lot of places. I think this is kind of just, I mean, even in Roseville, they've used it, and that city loves the product. And so I don't want to call this just a one-off, but it sure seems like we kind of got blindsided by something that shouldn't have happened.
We're pretty familiar with the project, so we can spend a while talking about it. But anyways, thank you, Mark.
Same contractor as Highway 12? For the paving?
Vanguard, so this is a joint venture between Gelati Brothers.
Right.
But the issue stemmed from Vanguard. Yes.
Okay.
They are doing the RCC.
Same spec as what Caltrans used,
No.
or a little different?
I don't think they're using roller compacted concrete.
Yeah, they're using PCC.
They're just using PCC?
Yeah. For the
Okay.
start.
And they're making that PCC on Argonaut's old yard off of Sebastopol Road, rather than being furnished by a local
Candy.
canyon. Go ahead, Ray.
Can you tell us, how much, because of this, construction, being torn up, how much is that gonna delay the finishing of the project?
So we're still within our working days currently. They're coming up quick though. It's like mid-April. We're hopeful we'll get it done before that, but it may extend it by, I don't like to give hard numbers. Gonna say potentially 3 weeks to a month, maybe less. It's really hard to say, because once we get going again, then they move pretty quick. But we've had a lot of things that continue to come up where they push back on one of our decisions, and then we have to discuss in the city, and it kind of elongates the process.
Apparently, the people who live in the area are very, anxious to get this finished.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we are too.
Yeah, we want this to finish this way.
Trust me, so is the contractor.
I think
Everyone wants to finish the process.
Thank you. Go ahead,
Yeah.
if you will. Anybody have anything else? Okay, go ahead.
All right, let's see. I'm going to cover the next one, which is Farmers Lane Extension, and I don't have a lot to report on Farmers Lane Extension. I will say that it is still currently in our general plan. We haven't had much, if any, work directly related to it over the past year. This is even the same slide from last year. Phase 1, we used $437,000 from Measure M funding, and that was related to just the right of way. The right of way is still, we still have one parcel that still needs to be acquired for the project to have the entire right of way acquired. So we're still working on that. And then the slide shows the funding according to where the funding has been spent, and the majority of it has been in the right of way. We also have had money for the environmental and the PS&E. Upon moving forward with this, that's something that we do have to consider, though, is the environmental was done quite a long time ago, so we might have to refresh the environmental moving forward. We're also looking at other opportunities to what we could use that section for if in the general plan, or if we don't have money to do the actual roadway, is there an opportunity, which I think there is, to put a bike and ped facility along that segment of roadway to connect over to Bennett Valley Road, which will then eventually connect to the Southeast Greenway. So that would make a great connection that goes all the way to Yolanda. And then our hope is also to connect from Yolanda over to the Hearn interchange, which it has a separated bikeway, and down to the smart multi-use path. So big picture, that'd be a fantastic facility. I think that's it for this one, if there's any questions on that
I
one.
saw one hand go over. Tom, did you have a question or are you just stretching? Right, Jerry and then Melissa.
Yeah, I have a question. Can you go back to the slide that shows the.
Alignment.
Yeah, and the question I asked the last time is the question I'll ask again is why that route? We have existing roads that would satisfy getting us back to the highway or to the shopping areas, whatever. Why put in a new roadway all the way across basically this park area right now, isn't it?
Yes. It basically, yes, it is. So in the planning that was done years ago, they identified that if you don't put this in, you're basically have a lot of cut through traffic in the neighborhoods. And that's exactly what we're seeing right now. If you go on to Brookwood, Linwood, back to Brookwood, to Kiwanis Springs Road, during the peak PM and AM peak periods, that is the route that people take. And that's not the route people are supposed to take. They're supposed to be an actual arterial street for them to use instead of going through the neighborhoods. So that's.
And Kiwanis Springs is not classified as
Kiwanis Springs is a minor arterial, I would say. So that one is, but Brookwood is not intended to be.
right.
Meta is not intended to be. And Aston is not intended to be. So, and Brookwood. So those are all lower collector level streets that have acted more like arterial streets over the years.
So would the project be less expensive if it was routed through Kiwanis Springs and we protected the neighborhoods?
So that's an option that we've looked at. Is one of the large costs associated with the project is the bridge that would go across from where the Sonoma Academy is over to Taylor Mountain. So one of the options would be to stop it at Kiwanis Springs and connect into there. That still doesn't, there's a lot of houses that were built fronting. So it's an arrow on it. But like right by the end of the S and between the R there's a lot of housings that are fronted along Kiwanis Springs Road. I'm sure they would not appreciate having arterial traffic on their street. So it's something we're sensitive to, but it's also, we need to have, I mean, in my opinion, we need to have an outlet for the vehicles that aren't intended to be in the neighborhoods to be somewhere. But conversely to that, I would love to see a bike and ped path along.
I wouldn't just disagree with the bike and ped, and you split it so you have a bike and ped to make it through there.
Melissa?
My understanding, the city identified this project as an evacuation route, so can you give us an idea what priority is this project on the city agenda? And can you also give us an idea about, the available funding and what's the shortage,
Sure, there is no available funding.
So when do you start?
I mean, that's there isn't any. So it's hasn't been a high priority for council at this point. We have the Hearn interchange, which has been a high priority. We have the bike and ped overcrossing, which is the next large project high priority. This would be probably the third one in line. I don't know that it could be used as an evacuation route for sure if it was constructed. I don't know that the fire department is counting on it as being a fire evacuation route.
But I think it was identified as an evacuation route in a study that the city conducted, like to say there is no available funding, I think this is inaccurate, statement, because the city collects, impact fees, from a lot of developments. You should have some funding, not no funding at all,
I can tell you from the capital projects budget that there is not funding in that account right now. So, and we do collect impact fees.
So where does it go, the impact fee then?
They go to a variety of different projects. So they go to our capital, they go to, like this year, we got, I think, $2.7 million in capital fees. So they go to traffic signal installations, they go to bike detection, they go to just a variety of different projects that have immediate needs. So one of the reasons why this one hasn't been funded over the years is there hasn't been a commitment from council to say, yes, this is the next project that we want you to work on. So we're taking direction from them.
If this were constructed, what traffic queuing would be most impacted? Would it be the Highway 12 backup from Farmers Lane back to the west? What gets relieved if this extension goes through?
Before.
So I know the neighborhood traffic would get relieved. There,
Like Brookwood and
yes, that's the
Okay.
main.
Yeah.
There's over, I think, 12,000 vehicles a day in Brookwood, which isn't what it's intended to have. That traffic would immediately move over to that facility, the Farmers Lane facility. And excuse me. It could cause other issues though too, right? So then we'd have to improve Yolanda as well. Because Yolanda is the outlet that gets you
Right.
back to the freeway in that area. So it's not that it would, I think it'd eliminate a lot of the neighborhood traffic that's not supposed to
Okay.
be there, but that's the main.
not so
thing.
much the Highway 12 traffic, but the neighborhood.
It
traffic
could
is-
bypass some of that, but I don't think that's gonna be the main use. I think it's
Yeah,
more the
okay. Thank you.
interior collection.
And then it would induce demand too, just being an additional roadway would likely have a secondary impact. But my question is, if the bike path, the dedicated bike path concept, perhaps with a bollard for evacuation preparedness, is it possible to recast the project and to make it more fundable to state and federal funders by redesigning the project, and would it still meet the Measure M criteria that lists it and has you coming back to talk to us about it every year?
I don't know. I mean, I think if we have multiple uses for it, I think it would become more eligible for grants and those types of.
My question was more to recast the project, not as a roadway capacity vehicle enhancing project, but as a vehicle miles travel reduction project, and evacuation, safety evacuation project. I think that would be eminently more fundable. It may not be what was originally envisioned in this particular corridor. It may not get to all of the impacts that we might have had for it, but it might be something to think about for the future.
Yeah, absolutely.
Great, thank you.
Any others on farmers? No. Alicia, you're up next.
You've been listening to us. Are you worried now?
A little bit. Okay, I'm Felicia Ong, and I'm the project manager for the Santa Rosa Creek Trail project. As you can see, this is the site map where we will be installing a pedestrian and bicycle path connecting the west side of North Dutton down to the north side of the Santa Rosa Creek Trail. So this is phase 1 and phase 2 of the project, where there was a connection from Streamside Drive to Mission Boulevard and a creek connection to east side of Dutton to the Santa Rosa Creek Trail as well. We are currently on phase 3. And so as you can see here, we have completed phase 1 and phase 2 and currently are in phase 3. And then those are the Measure M funds that were appropriated for those individual phases. So currently, you can see here, this is our schedule. We are currently still in the environmental phase. We have recently posted the initial study mitigated negative declaration for public comment. We had anticipated the comment period to close on April 8th, but I did receive a request from CDFW to extend that deadline. And so we're in discussions on how long we will be extending that. And then the next step will be to complete right-of-way acquisition. We will be going through one private property to build this trail. And then hopefully we will be in construction by next summer. So as you can see here, these are the funds that have been broken down into each development phase. The second column is what we have been awarded by SCTA. And then our reimbursement amounts and our local funds. And I think that is it.
Any questions on the Santa Rosa Creek Trail actions? Yeah, Tim.
Let's see. I don't know if I need a microphone. If I'm sitting over here, but I'll talk so I can pick it up. Sorry.
Make sure it's turned on.
Hello, can you hear me? Good. Okay. I love the creek trails around Santa Rosa. This is actually more of an interest for mine in the sense that who originally started building these and who maintains them? Because I notice each city seems to have their own set of how these are set up. So I'm curious to how that works.
I'm sorry.
Like who originally started building the creek trail system? Santa Rosa has, I think, one of the best ones in the county.
Uh-huh.
And then how do they get maintained and funded generally?
Take a stab at that.
Okay.
So I don't, they're owned by the Sonoma County Water Agency, but I think we have an agreement with them to maintain and operate the paved side only of the creek trail system. So if it's a maintenance issue, then it lands on the city of Santa Rosa to maintain the asphalt part.
Folks.
But as far as how they began, I don't know. They've been there as long as I can remember. So they've been there quite a while.
And maybe I'll open that up just because I've seen from mobility aspect and getting around, I think we kind of underuse our creeks and our creek trails. These are, class 4 pathways, or class 3. I mixed up all the classes there. Easy to use pathways for bikes and peds. And it seems like we might prioritize some of that for future planning.
And
I don't know how.
no auto traffic.
Right. I mean, they're really nice. And like Santa Rosa has the best one. I think Brush Creek, so I drive to Sonoma Valley for work. And I took the trail one and it popped up. I said, oh my God, I drive this every day. I don't know there's a trail that goes underneath this. Right. So I would also encourage us to look at how to put signage along the trails, directing people to things so they know where they're going and not just see them as recreational pathways, but they're actually ways to get around town.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's just my point. So thank you. Keep it up.
Rick?
Can you bring up the last slide again? Yeah, that one. So there's a big difference between those two numbers in the bottom row. What are you doing about closing it?
In which two numbers?
Versus
471 versus 200.
Because we have not yet started construction, so we haven't asked for reimbursement for that phase yet.
Who are you gonna ask?
CTA.
They haven't appropriated the funds yet. The funds are available to them, but they haven't appropriated them yet because they haven't had need of them.
Yeah, I see.
Okay. See no other questions. Thank you.
Easy.
Okay. Hi, everybody. My name is Desiree. I'm an associate civil engineer with the city of Santa Rosa and the project manager for the Santa Rosa Avenue Corridor Improvement Project. So for this project, we will define the corridor as the stretch of Santa Rosa Avenue from Highway 12 to Sonoma Avenue, as you can see here. And this project in general improved our pedestrian facilities, bicycle facilities, vehicle and transit facilities, as well as just some general beautification of the corridor into the downtown area. So as you can see in this little snippet, this is one stretch of the entire corridor, but we have some medians added in, which are going to have some nice landscaping in the middle for that beautification factor. And then for like our pedestrian facility upgrades, we upgraded all those to new ADA standards, added in some crosswalks, as you can see. On the north side, we had already a flashing beacon, so we've added another one in on the south side as well. Improves visibility for our pedestrian crosswalkers and allows them to safely cross. Originally, this stretch of road did not have a designated bike lane. So a lot of bicyclists were just riding in the road with traffic. And now, as you can see from the design, there's its own bike lane, class 2, which is going to help close the gap that we had along Santa Rosa Avenue. In order to achieve that, we had to reduce the lanes. So this was originally 2 through lanes in each direction, and now it's a single lane. And then for transit upgrades, we had originally 2 stops along both directions, north and south. One on the south side next to Highway 12, one in the middle around Sebastopol Avenue and Mill Street, but we had nothing on the north side. So pedestrians or transit users had to go all the way to the transit mall on 2nd Street or east towards D and E Street. So there wasn't really that ease for them. And so we have since added a bus stop at the corner of Sonoma Avenue and Santa Rosa Avenue. So I'm going to show you a bunch of slides just of our progress so far. So the top left image is a stretch of the road that was existing before the project started. And then the bottom right is that same location, just now with that median installed. The striping has not yet been finished, so you can't see that there, but you're seeing that beautification factor. Here we have on the left is our signage identifying this project, identifying the Measure M, and you can see some of the traffic control that was installed for it. And then on the right, we have our cutout for our median and one of the new curb ramp upgrades that was installed. One thing we really wanted to hone in on during the traffic control from the beginning of construction was reducing that one, like to the single lane, to help get our frequent drivers familiar with that. You know, it takes a little grace period to really implement it. So from the beginning, they've been using one lane. Another curb ramp upgrade, and that was at an existing crosswalk, and again, some more median work. And then here's the median installed now. So very nice and clean. And you can see some temporary striping in place. This project is currently on hold for a winter suspension since we've been having these rains in and out. So we have temporary striping again, so we just don't have all those cones out there all the time. Our current resumption date is May 1st, and that's when we will finalize our pavement efforts, do some dig outs, topical slurry application, and then our final striping will be installed. Here's the schedule that we had for this project. Construction started in July of last year and was projected to end in December. We did have a lot of underground conflicts that we encountered, so that kind of prolonged the project a little. Then it was winter. So the hope is just the pavement efforts and we can be done by July of this year. And then here's the breakdown of our funding. We had $343,000 of Measure M funding, and we have been reimbursed for all of that. And there's the breakdown of our local funds as well. And technically, I think this is for all the slides, but we have a website where you can find more information on all the projects we've talked about today.
So have you found necking down from 2 lanes to 1 has increased delay time? Is there traffic jams? Is there queuing lines, or is it not really noticeable?
At first, definitely some queuing lines. I think that also had to do though with the actual construction happening. So all the cones, the people out there. I get texts from family and friends all the time about it. And I did get a nice one yesterday saying they can tell it's cleaned up more and it's not as backed up, but I think we'll kind of have to see how it plays out. Where the hope is the traffic calming too, you know, it's not gonna queue up, everybody's gonna slow down to help with the bikes and the medians and all that.
Thank you.
Anecdotally, Mr. Chair, it seems to be working not too badly.
Well, I'm more selfishly concerned with our car show at Juilliard Park, where we get illegal parkers parking on the side of Santa Rosa Avenue from Sonoma Avenue up to Juilliard Park.
Oh, no.
I'm wondering, does this create more room for them to illegally park?
No, no more than's already there.
Found a way, anyways. Thank you for that. Yeah, Erin.
I ride this, I cycle this stretch every day and I was going kind of a different route while all the construction was going on. I'm glad to hear that there's more still coming because once I saw the construction was gone, I thought, oh, okay, it's done. And it certainly isn't
Yes,
done
yes.
because the experience right now as a cyclist, besides the road still being chewed up, is there's the temporary striping, but there are no of the little bike symbols, and there's no bike lane signs, so it's not obvious that it's a bike lane, and I've seen
Drivers go in there.
yeah, so it's yeah, the first day I rode on it was like, wait a minute, am I supposed, where am I supposed to be? Who is supposed to be where is really challenging right now with that not being finished.
Right, and obviously we don't want that danger right now too, even though it is temporary striping. So that actually was brought up last week and we are working with the contractor to get some of those signs installed. So it is more obvious right now, even though it is just temporary striping.
Tom?
So speed limit and bike lane width?
The speed limit is currently 35 and the plan is to stay 35. The bike lane width, I believe, is 6 feet.
Okay. And
It might be 5 feet with a 2-foot buffer, actually. I think.
Okay.
Okay.
Are they actually? Let's.
My next question was, are there any buffered
No numbers.
segments or protected segments?
Yes, yeah, so we actually made a plan change late last year and changed it to buffered bike lanes.
Okay.
So, but to do that, I think we had to reduce it from 6 to 5 and then we stole another foot from the lane to put the buffer in.
Okay. Going from.
Yeah, at the north end of the project, we're actually going to be putting in a segment between First Street and Sonoma to have a cycle track in that segment to connect the Prince Memorial Greenway Trail to the street.
Okay, that's still in the offing.
That's still, yeah, that's not part of this project. That's a separate project that we're doing. Not
Cycle
ever,
track.
yeah.
I'm curious, there was a plan years ago, corridor plan of some type to go from 2 lanes to 1 in each direction, and there was a struggle with the flex at the time, and plan went away. And did something change? That the fire department blessed going to 1 lane, which I think is great.
We do, yes, so the fire department has been consulted with this, and even though we are reducing to 1 lane to add the bike lane, there's still the room for the current drivers to get out of the way. There's the parking areas on the side and the bike lane if they need to pull out so that the fire truck can go through.
Okay, thank you.
Seeing no more hands raised. Thank you. Nice report.
Any other questions?
That was enough.
That was plenty. That was plenty.
Yeah, go ahead, Steve.
How are we doing on the Southwest Greenway?
I'm not up to speed on that project, actually. Last I heard we're still working on it with Caltrans on acquiring it.
So it's still in the process of the city requiring this?
Yeah, I'm not super familiar with the project though. I mean, I know what it is. I just don't know. I don't have any up-to-date information personally on
And so we don't do any of the specific planning until the acquisition is complete?
it. There is planning that's being done, but again, it's just not a project I'm up to speed on.
Okay.
And I just want to say, Rob Sprinkle, you are a rock star. I say this every chance I get to publicly give you accolades. And I like your team.
They're
Good
great.
team.
They are great.
Thank you very much.
Yep, absolutely. Thanks for having us.
You bet. And we're back to Shauna for some MOE stuff. My favorite things.
Otherwise known as maintenance of effort. So I think everybody in the room is familiar, but just in case. Maintenance of effort is a requirement of the Public Utility Code as part of Measure M. Jurisdictions that receive funding from us for maintenance of their roadways are not allowed to supplant funds that they've already had with Measure M funds. They have to add what they already had to the Measure M funds to make Measure M funds more effective. So we require that they report out on their maintenance of effort every year. And some of the more senior members of this committee may recall that we changed the policy and how we recorded maintenance of effort. We have, so not too long ago, we changed the policy to have a 3-year baseline and to have a rolling average that they could compare to. But in changing that, each jurisdiction must maintain their own maintenance of effort instead of relying on what had been an average of the aggregate of all of the jurisdictions together. So this year we are happy to report that all the jurisdictions are in compliance. They everybody is within their baseline and above. So SCTA staff are asking that the Citizens Advisory Committee make a recommendation to the board to that effect, that SCTA is in compliance with Public Utilities Code.
Are you happy, Shauna?
Yes, yes, I am.
Yes. I think I see that in your emails that are in here, so thank you for including that.
Did I hear the makings of a motion right there,
I have
Tom?
a couple of questions before we have the motion. Just-
Let's get into discussion.
Oh,
we could.
Motion first?
Yeah,
I'll make the
motion,
I'll second.
second discussion. Yes.
So two questions I had was, are deletions things that shouldn't be, are in their number, but shouldn't be in their number? I didn't understand what deletions were.
Deletions are exemptions. So in our policy, and our policy is listed in the staff report. But there are 3 options where a jurisdiction can ask for an exception, essentially. The local jurisdiction has undertaken 1 or more major capital projects during those fiscal years that required accumulating unrestricted revenues that are not restricted for use on streets and highways such as general funds, to support the project during 1 or more fiscal years. Second option is a source of unrestricted revenue used to support major capital project or projects is no longer available to the local jurisdiction, and the local jurisdiction lacks the authority to continue the unrestricted funding source. And the third option is 1 or more sources of unrestricted revenues that are available to the local jurisdiction is producing less than 95% of the amount produced in those fiscal years, and the reduction is not caused by any discretionary action of the local jurisdiction. So if there are projects that used funding that fall into those categories, they are allowed to take that out of their maintenance of effort.
Okay.
Even with that, and what is valuable to know is that they report all of these numbers to the state as well, because the SB1 local street maintenance funding also has a maintenance of effort requirement. So they are already reporting all of these figures to the state. So we simply ask them to repeat it to us.
Okay. So-
And so everything matches.
And the other question I had was when I looked at your summary on whatever page that is, the MOE reporting. And I was looking at the numbers, when I look at, just so I understand, Roanoke Park, for instance, it shows 1.674 million. And it looked like the baseline is higher than that.
So it may be, but they have a rolling average. They have a 3-year rolling average. So as long as it meets the 3-year rolling average, let me direct you to the right.
Well, because I'm looking at 3-year rolling averages have been higher as shown there. Or is that a different 3-year rolling
Hang on.
average?
Let me-
Quick
let me-
clarification,
let me
on
find
page
the right-
13 of the document.
Page
Is that what it
13.
is? Yeah.
13.
Oh, yeah.
13, yeah.
Page 13, yeah.
So
You've explained this to me before. Doesn't mean I totally understand it.
So if I'm looking at. Roanoke Park-
Page 13, Roanoke Park and Windsor were the only two that I was looking at. And
Page 13.
Yeah,
it's the one that says Measure M fiscal year 2023 MOE reporting. It's a very simple table.
sorry, I'm looking at the electronic packet, so I'm trying to find the right page. Can you
Page 13 of the packet or page 13?
13.
I'm all around.
Oh, okay, that,
And I'm trying to understand. That looks like the rolling average, but that looks like what they were spending, and that looks like it's larger than this way I didn't understand.
yeah, let me, sorry.
Okay,
Just, yeah.
want this here or you got it?
No, I'm gonna find it so I can look because,
I know Rick's supposed to ask those questions, but I saw that.
So I can follow the question. What, give me the numbers so I can follow the bouncing ball, Jerry. What do you?
It's on page 13.
Yeah, 1971 for the 3-year rolling average
Yeah.
versus,
Versus the 1.6. I was guessing that the first column is this is what we spent.
But you need to go back to the measure policy 4.4 rolling average in the back letter on page 59. It'll help you get through that question.
Oh,
59.
59 and 60 of the written package, but in the electronic package, it'll go through. Thank you for full. That's the first time I remember you providing all the supporting documents with this. Usually it's a
page 59. Huh?
59
Some of the pages.
Oh, that one.
I don't have the financials in the printed packet, so that could be why there's a.
no, it's,
Sorry.
yeah, it's,
Keep looking.
he was looking at the right one, I was just. So, let's see, I apologize for not being prepared, it's been a second since I looked at all of these, but if we look at Roanoke Park.
That one.
I may have included the wrong numbers in that one, page 13.
Oh, okay. Well, then that would make sense.
Because that may have been an earlier version, and I do apologize if that got
This is
included.
as of 2/26. So maybe.
Yeah, there were a couple of jurisdictions that had adjustments, but I have checked and verified that everybody is in fact in compliance.
Okay,
so-
page 59 clarifies it.
Yes, great. And I apologize for page 13. I don't have to go back and look at that. We have to make sure that comes out because,
you're officially on the list now. You know?
yeah. Sorry about the confusion.
And my question was maybe a simpler, dumber question. On page 53, for example, looking at the County of Sonoma, that was a pretty substantial set of deletions there.
It was indeed.
And so I was curious how that gets reported to the state and also added up for our 3-year rolling average. I mean, they obviously reporting these deletions directly through to the state as well.
They are.
So, but I didn't see clearly how that rolling average might be changing by jurisdiction in this reporting, so.
So,
So if last year they reported for 21-22 19 million. And then this year, the adjusted number is 8 million. Does that change their own average? That's the dumb question.
no, it's not a dumb question, but, if you go to the bottom of that page that you were looking at on page 53, I think you said. You can see the deletion. So the numbers at the top are what they are before their exceptions.
Right.
If you scroll down to the bottom, adjusted expenditures are actually quite similar. 8 million and 8 million.
Okay, so I misunderstand then that the FY 21-22, that 19 was not previous year's report. This is.
Well, it was, but it was because they adjusted what they had reported to the state, so they adjusted what they reported to us. That's why that second
Okay.
column was included in the first
Okay,
place.
so just the adjustment correction gets made, flows all the way through, and it does change the annual baseline.
It does.
calculation.
Yes,
That
it
makes sense.
That was a good enough answer. You're off the list now.
Thank you.
So even when it says.
So we're in discussion mode. Any other questions? And if not, we'll call for the question, which was basically to report back to the board of and accept this, right?
Yeah.
So all those in favor?
Aye.
Oppose? Any abstentions? Motion carries.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Brenton and David, we're on to financial statements.
Oh, right there. All right, hello, everybody.
Hello.
See. It's a pretty straightforward month for financials, I think. I can look at it over here. Okay, so the information packet is the same as usual with the balance sheet for the entirety of Measure M first, and then balance sheets for each Measure M program split out, and then a year-to-date and program-to-date cash flow, same as every month. Revenues in February were a little over 3.5 million. And so year-to-date revenues are now $17,370,434. And there were 1.316 million in expenses in February, with year-to-date expenses now $13,586,394. And we have a cash balance of $65,915,228. For the February revenues, the vast majority was sales and use taxes, a little over 3.4 million, with $108,000 in federal pass-through dollars from Caltrans for the Safe Route to School program. And then February expenses, the majority, 1.09 million, was contributions to other governments. That was for various highway and street projects. There were $46,000 in staff time and $171,800 in consultant services. And that's it for finances, unless you have questions about anything in particular.
Just one question. We've addressed this before, but $65 million cash balance, I get nervous when I have 50 million of my own in one agency, one
Me
bank.
too.
So I try to diversify. So anyways, can you just refresh our memories? Where do we keep 65 million?
I think David would report on that more, but I believe it's mostly in the local street project. David, do you Oh, yeah. Do you mean specifically where's the actual money?
Institution.
With the county treasurer?
Thank you.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. Mostly.
Can you please go to the first slide?
We do earn interest. Yes.
So
There were interest revenues last month.
So the year-to-date revenue in comparison to last year, what is it exactly?
Should be.
I'm sorry, what's that?
The year-to-date revenues in comparison to last year's, what is it?
I don't have the year-to-date revenues for last year on hand, but I believe we're currently on track to be within 2%, 3% of last year. It's pretty close. I don't know the exact difference though.
Do you usually do this comparison or monitor, in comparison to the previous year or not?
Not on a month-to-month basis for this report. We do have for our budget things.
Yeah, we definitely compare year-over-year revenues on a quarterly basis and also, as Brent mentioned, for annually as part of the budget process. So that's what we're tracking.
Just one other.
Yeah.
I love this version because the other version with all of the details, I don't know where to start. But this is never included in our packet.
Oh.
Is there any possibility, do you have this prepared ahead of time and can this be in the front of our packet?
I can certainly start including it in the packet. Yes, sure.
I understand this.
Okay. Okay. Yes, I'll start including it and providing it to Drew in time to go into the packet.
Thanks, Brent.
Yep, thank you.
It's the detail.
David, anything to add? Okay. And you don't, this is just information only, you don't need.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, Dana, you're up. Countywide transportation plan.
Okay, excellent. Hi, everyone. So we are about halfway through the process of updating our countywide active transportation plan. And along with that, we are updating the local plans for 7 out of our 10 jurisdictions. Santa Rosa, Petaluma, and Windsor are currently all in the process of updating their local plans independently. So ultimately, the projects that are adopted in those 3 plans will go under the umbrella of the countywide plan. Today, we're going to give you a little overview of the plan and the process to date, but really want to focus in on the methodology we're using for prioritizing projects in the plan. We are facilitating the development of this plan through our countywide bicycle and pedestrian advisory committee. And if anybody's interested in diving deeper into it, you're always welcome to attend those meetings. There's every other month on the 4th Tuesday of the month. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to the project manager from our consultant team. This is Erin Ferguson from Fair and Pierce.
Great, thank you.
Hello, good afternoon, everyone. I'm going to share my screen and pull up a presentation. Let me try that again.
Erin, we do have it here if you would prefer us to share it.
There you go.
I think I'm getting there. Can you see the slides, not the notes?
Milestone number 2 agenda.
All right, great. Thank you. Yes, so I'm going to cover a few different topics. We'll give you a little bit of an overview, as Dana mentioned, in terms of the process and some of the key considerations that have been guiding us through the process to date. And then we're going to have some time for discussion around the prioritization topic. And then I'll wrap up with next steps or any other general questions you all may have. All right, jumping into an overview. I suspect most in this room kind of are already familiar with this lingo, but active transportation plan. Previously in transportation planning and engineering industry, we had bicycle and pedestrian master plans. As we've evolved, we've kind of broadened that terminology to be an active transportation plan. Active transportation really refers to human-powered modes of travel like walking, biking, or using mobility devices. It's also inclusive of things like e-bikes or e-scooters, so some of those newer technologies that we're starting to see people use as well. The plan itself focuses on increasing active transportation modes with the idea of identifying where we need infrastructure projects for improvements, as well as supportive policies or programs. Having a plan makes it possible for regional agencies like SCTA to help local agencies coordinate across those jurisdictional boundaries. And in doing so, with the intent of improving people's quality of life. It also can help create opportunities to secure funding and through various grant funding opportunities. And then generally it can help guide investment both with public funds, but also on land use projects as you have private development happening. Specific to the countywide active transportation plan update, we've organized our activities into kind of a few different tasks. Again, as Dana noted, there's one piece of this that is a regional plan, and then 7 agencies receiving their local active transportation plans out of this process. So kind of initially establishing a foundation with what are existing conditions, existing policies in place, existing bike or sidewalk infrastructure in place, doing technical analyses to help understand kind of the quality of the experience, or the comfort of the experience for what's out there today, using input and findings from SCTA's Vision Zero action plan and the high injury network that was identified as part of that effort, as well as many of the local agencies also have local road safety plans. So incorporating the findings from those local road safety plans and considering kind of regional activity and kind of what are those trip making kinds of characteristics. Task 3 is ongoing throughout the project. So it's engagement and coordination. And I'll talk more about kind of what the upcoming engagement is, but it's really organized kind of into 3 rounds. An early round that took place in the fall to get community members kind of general input on concerns, places where they've, experienced kind of good or bad conditions for walking and biking. We're coming up on the start of a second round of engagement where we will share back with the communities to get input on draft projects and priorities. And then there will be a kind of a third round once the full plan is together, where the community will have an opportunity to see and comment on that. What we're in the midst of now is identifying those projects and programs, as well as that funding and implementation task. So identifying how to prioritize projects is a key piece to helping local agencies, but also helping SCTA think about what are priorities when it comes to implementing the projects and the improvements. And then those last couple of activities is the actual documentation, the plan creation, and then process for approval and adoption. On the coordination front, I touched on this too, so I'll just kind of highlight it. There's regular updates to a number of SCTA's established committees, and then also updates for local agencies and their local advisory kind of committees, or for many of them, it's their planning commission throughout the process. So some guiding principles that we've been working from as part of identifying kind of those draft projects, policies, programs, and as part of thinking about the prioritization criteria that I'll speak about in a second. So these are kind of guiding principles, themes throughout the work. So one is Vision Zero. So SCTA and the regions, the countywide commitment to Vision Zero and the work through the Vision Zero action plan. That plan includes a number of action items that will filter through to policies, but also understanding where from a geographic location, where there might be greater safety needs or opportunities to improve safety at certain locations, and wanting to make sure we recognize that in the project development, as well as in the prioritization. helping to continue to enhance the active transportation networks out there to continue to strive towards being an all ages and all abilities network. And so this is the concept of not everybody is comfortable, not everybody is able to ride a bike on a basic bike lane. And so if we really want to encourage and enable more people to move around our communities through active modes, we need to be thinking about how we can change the roadway infrastructure and built environment to make walking, biking, rolling a more accessible and feasible way to move around the community for kind of a wider range of individuals. So we've used analysis techniques like level of traffic stress, which considers kind of vehicle volume on a roadway, speeds of vehicles moving on the roadway, and how much separation a person has from those moving vehicles to the space where they might be walking or biking. So we've used that methodology to understand how stressful, how uncomfortable might those existing conditions be, and how can we improve those conditions, particularly where we have things like transit or schools or other community centers or local neighborhood kind of commercial areas where we want people to be able to walk, bike, and be, using those active modes as a way to access those destinations. So thinking about that in a broader spectrum and broader range of users.
May I ask you a question about the slide?
Sure, this one.
So what's the relationship? I see some percentages, up there. So
Yeah, so yep.
I understand, how they relate, to the categories.
Yeah. Yeah, so this the image on this slide is specific to biking. So it's specific to that mode, but it's the understanding that people kind of self-identify often based on their own comfort level into one of these four groups. The leftmost group, kind of the 1%, is the very small portion of the population that will ride a bike regardless of the condition of the bike facility on the roadway and regardless of whether really a bike facility exists on the roadway. So they're kind of characterized as strong and fearless.
No, but.
So the 1%'s already out there, or the less than 1% that falls into that group is already out there riding. 7% of the population is enthusiastic and they're confident bike riders. So again, they might be enticed to ride if there is at least a bike lane out there under certain conditions, they would be, comfortable using it. There's a larger percent of the population that is characterized as interested but concerned. And so that kind of 60% or so of the population is the real opportunity from a kind of really opening up more mode choices for folks to get people out of their cars and more comfortable making the shorter daily trips that they need to make. In this case, by bike, if we can create roadway infrastructure where biking is more comfortable, where vehicle speeds either are slower or there's a separated space for people biking, things of that nature. So level of traffic stress is that technical analysis that we can do to get a sense of like, okay, what streets, because volumes are low and speeds are low, are already lower stress, and what streets, because volumes are high or speeds are high, are too high stress. And how can we take those kind of higher stress pieces of the road network and improve them so that they're no longer barriers or they're no longer kind of the hurdles to getting this kind of 60% of the population kind of out biking more, not biking always, but, using for those shorter trips, using something other than their car.
The 30% of people who never gonna ride a bike, no matter what.
Yeah, there's a fourth bucket that falls into no way, no how. But certainly, and again, this is specific to biking, where that could be a physical disability or just kind of their own personal past traumatic event that falls under no way, no how. Or it might be situational. There are places I won't ride with my daughter, so there are times where I fall into the no way, no how bucket. So it just kind of, acknowledging that for some people that mode might not be possible, but there's still other ways in which kind of this level of traffic stress and thinking about these different groups of the population can help us make, walking or other types of mobility outside of a car possible for a wider spectrum of the communities we work in. So another key guiding principle is incorporating industry best practices. I mentioned as an industry, we've evolved from kind of thinking about bicycle and pedestrian master plans to active transportation. There's new emerging technology, like the kind of stand-up e-scooters in this photo here. There's also, we've learned more as an industry since the last bicycle and pedestrian master plans were updated about the types of treatments and the types of design treatments and things that are possible to help improve walking and biking conditions. And so making sure that we're making the most of those advances in the industry and kind of integrating that into projects as well as policies and programs. All right, so kind of continuing on, we have vision and goals for the plan that I'll touch on, because these two kind of are foundational to understanding kind of where our draft prioritization criteria have come from. So the vision statement for the plan currently reads, our guiding principles are to improve safety, connectivity, equity, and quality of life. Walking, biking, and rolling shall be safe and appealing modes for people of all ages and abilities to use for everyday transportation and recreation. You can see the safety piece, you can see all ages and abilities, kind of opening up those opportunities for more people. The three goals, I'll read these here in a minute, and their kind of descriptions. So the first, connected and reliable, deliver a continuous active transportation network that links daily activities and housing, and that allows people of all ages and abilities to use a variety of transportation types easily, affordably, and dependably. Second goal, safe and well-maintained, create and sustain a high quality and low stress active transportation network, employ Vision Zero and safety plan policies and strategies to advance this goal. And then third, community oriented and place-based. Tailor projects to the surrounding community context and user profiles, support a diversity of uses and users, and create community through active transportation programs and policies that prioritize walking, biking, and rolling. All right, so kind of with that in mind, kind of getting into our next topic here, the projects, priorities, policies, and programs, and their development. So this is kind of an overview of the process that we're using to get to kind of that end final plans and board approval. So things in green are things that we've mostly completed, substantially completed, or have a draft of. Yellow are the upcoming next steps, things circled in yellow. So as I mentioned before, we've kind of done that foundational understanding of existing conditions and technical analysis and an initial round of engagement with the community. And we're in the midst of having with staff developing those draft projects, policies and programs and draft priorities using the prioritization criteria we'll talk about in a second. And so then what's coming up next for us later this spring is another round of engagement with the community that would then lead to finalizing the projects and priorities, policies, programs. And from there, kind of summer into fall would be the draft plan development and the third round of engagement kind of out in the second half of this year. So here's our prioritization
Excuse me,
topic.
I have a question, if you may.
Mhm.
Can you expand on the community engagement, you know, like what are you doing?
Yeah, so in the first round of engagement there, we had online engagement and there was a survey online and interactive map online. So people could answer questions via the survey and provide comments on the map about specific locations. We also had a series of what we call pop-up events where we went to community events or community locations with activities to share information about the project and gather, again, input on kind of their concerns or areas of interest as it relates to active transportation. We're also engaging with with 4 community-based organizations to understand kind of some specific kind of topics and issues and help reach different populations within the community. And that's something that's ongoing now. And then the second round of engagement coming up for each of the 7 local agencies will have one within each of those 7 jurisdictions. We'll have one pop-up event. We'll have one community meeting dedicated specifically to the plan development, so to discussing the draft projects and so forth. And then we'll have another round of online engagement. So for those who can't physically make it in person, there will be a way to provide input on the draft projects and such online. And then the third round of engagement is going to be the community's opportunity to provide input on the draft plan and kind of how we're going to go about that. That's still a bit TBD, but it's been a mix of online virtual engagement and then a few different strategies for in-person engagement dispersed across the county.
Aaron, thank you for that. I'm curious with a follow-up on the engagement question, how much basic terminology understanding, how much engagement are you getting with professional staff in our jurisdictions? We had a representative of one of our largest jurisdictions last month admit that she didn't know what level of traffic stress was as a metric. And it feels to me like some of these concepts, while they're, we hear about them around this table, we talk about them in the more detailed planning, but that may not be penetrating to our top decision makers because they're so busy with so many other priorities.
Yeah, I can tell you for the 7 local agencies where we're developing their local ATP as part of this process, we've had certainly a fair amount of email correspondence with them and kind of ad hoc check-in calls, but also 2 substantial staff work sessions. So the first work session with local agency staff was in roughly the October timeframe, September, October, I believe, of last year, around discussing the level of traffic stress results, as well as other existing conditions information, and essentially alongside input from the first round of community engagement to sit down and say, okay, here's what are kind of the gaps, needs, opportunities that we're seeing in terms of improvements to the active transportation network within their jurisdiction. And so that first work session with staff, along with the technical analysis and round one engagement, led to draft projects that then early in March, late in February, we had a second technical work session with staff to say, okay, here are the draft projects for them to kind of look at, sit down and provide follow-up input on, and then also begin the conversation around like what else from a policy perspective makes sense to also be including in this ATP update to help support implementation. So yeah, we've had two kind of substantial work sessions with staff and then communication in a variety of other ways. And then as I mentioned, their advisory bodies, most are the local advisory body for most of them that we're giving milestone updates to is their planning commission. And so that's the other kind of locally oriented group that's hearing from us regularly.
Eris has a question.
Yeah, to tag on to Tom's comment, my staff and I have been at many of the presentations at city councils and planning commissions and all of that all over the county. And with most of the cities, there seems to be a fair amount of engagement, but with the county, to tag on to that, at the last County Board of Supervisors meeting, there was a big presentation from the heads of 3 departments about active transportation. And none of them appeared to know that this plan was happening. Neither did some of the supervisors ask questions and made comments that would have been very much answered by saying, that is something we're doing as part of the active transportation plan. And then I actually today had a one-on-one meeting with one of those highly placed individuals in the county staff who said he had never heard that this was even that this process is even happening. So there's some disconnect somewhere, at least with the county, and I haven't been to all the cities, but I don't even know who the staff are. I mean, who at the county is even paying attention to this. So I just wanted to throw that in there too.
Jump in.
So was that a question for anybody to tackle? Who is paying attention to this?
Oh, I don't know.
Okay.
You are.
Well, I am, and he is, but I mean.
Here it is.
Didn't even
Dana
know.
is, this table is actually paying attention.
This table is.
This table's doing a great job of paying attention. I think there's a lot of good things happening in the county on this topic. It's just that it's a big county. There's a lot of priorities. We've been through COVID. There's a lot of challenges. So it's hard to get all those dots connected. And this is one of those disconnects that we could probably all take it onto ourselves, talk to our city councils, talk to our staff people, try and connect some of these dots. That's on us. And it's on this project too, to do a better job.
All right, Carol?
Well, 2 questions. One is communities. Are you talking about cities or parts of the county?
Yeah, thanks for asking that. Yeah, so in using that term, so we have 6 cities that we're working with for their local active transportation plans. And so it's inclusive of those 6 cities and then unincorporated county, where with unincorporated county, there are kind of sub-regions where there's more communities concentrated. And so we are, as part of the engagement, trying to target those areas of unincorporated county as well in terms of getting input for the plan.
So in Sonoma Valley and in the city of Sonoma, there are bicycle lanes that just disappear in the middle of very large traffic situations. I think those are all over 15 or 20 years old. But I'm just assuming it's built in that we're gonna like look at every single inch of these things and know that they're not just gonna disappear, right? I assume that's part of the
That's part of,
that sounds like an odd commitment to ask of you, but I've been, and I've just had the bicycle lane disappear and 4 lanes of traffic all around me with this.
yeah. Yeah, so the kind of basic, I'll say basic process of like identifying projects. One piece is looking at what are the, when we look at the existing network, what are the gaps? So that what you're describing where you're riding in bicycle lanes and then all of a sudden it just ends or disappears. That's a gap in the facility that you know, so looking at how do we fill those gaps or address those gaps to make the bicycle facility, you know, continuous connection. Another piece is looking at, are there existing facilities that need to be enhanced and improved? We know more now as an industry. And so are there, you know, things that, like you said, 15, 20 years that bike lane's been there. Should it look a bit different now based on what we know, or should it look different at an intersection, you know, based off of what we know now? So those types of enhancements to existing facilities. For pedestrians, it's a bit similar. A lot of the local agencies either are having us do a sidewalk inventory for them to help identify gaps, or they've recently done one as part of another project. And so we're incorporating those gaps into the project list. And then also looking at pedestrian crossing, so intersections, but also other places where, you know, based off of the type of land use, we would want people to be able to easily, safely cross the street, and trying to focus on those types of priority areas or priority destinations, like schools and things like that.
Musa has a quick question because he recognizes we're out of time. Go ahead.
Yeah, a quick question. When do you expect to identify specific projects? And at that time, if I may speak, I suggest you come back to this group so to include us in the engagement, you know, process to talk specifically about projects.
Yeah, we're in the process now. I mentioned late February and earlier this month, we've met with city staff about draft projects. And so we're kind of in the process of making adjustments to those based off of those latest conversations. And then really kind of starting probably in mid-April through some point in June, we'll be ready to share those draft projects, you know, more broadly to continue to get input. And so I can coordinate with Dana on how best to share that information with you all. It's a lot of projects. But yeah, we'd be happy to make sure you all have the ability to see those and weigh in.
Rick?
I do want to keep going a little bit further because we wanted to touch on prioritization piece.
If people do have to leave, we got to give them the grace of go ahead and go because we're scheduled for 5:30. So if you got to go, you got to go. But Rick has a question as well. Go ahead, Rick. Yeah.
We live in an era of increasing proliferation of modes of transportation. Things exist today that weren't even thought of a generation ago, like segways and e-bikes. And I'm just wondering how this proliferation might fit into your plans. For instance, do you consider e-bikes active transportation? Or what about golf carts? Probably not. But it seems like there's a rather fuzzy line between what's active transportation and what isn't.
Yeah, I agree. I think with new technology, it's testing our definition sometimes a little bit, but we are, with that said, we are considering those emerging mobility technologies, so that when I use that phrase, we're kind of lumping into that e-scooters or segways or the stand-up scooters. And I, at least kind of professionally, for me personally, like the delineation of, oh, those clearly fall into this kind of broader bucket of active transportation, is because as a human, if you're using one of those modes, you are still just as vulnerable of getting hurt if you were to be hit by a car. So there's not a whole lot of protection around you if you're in one of those modes. Now, it does change and can influence our policies around kind of what space we provide, or our policies and our projects in terms of what space we provide for those emerging technologies, because they do have the ability to move faster than someone simply walking. And so when we think about multi-use path design, or even just, the width of a bike lane, if it's going to be something that can be used by some of those other modes, thinking about some of those design characteristics or policy related pieces is certainly part of this update.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. So on the prioritization piece, so the way in which we're using our prioritization methodology is for each local agency, trying to help them identify what are their high priority investments. Where do they begin? There's lots of projects that we're identifying, lots of things they could do, but where do they begin? And so what I'm showing up here are those criteria that we're using to essentially, the way the methodology works is for each of these criteria, a given project can receive a point. And then you sum up the number of points that each project receives, and kind of compare them to one another. So the criteria that we're using, so the first one I noted is safety. And this is based off of if a project is improving a location that's on SCTA's Vision Zero high injury network, or could be a location identified in a local agency's local road safety plan, or if it's making an improvement to a parallel route to give people an alternative safe route for walking and biking. Equity, we're using a few different ways to look and consider equity in terms of socio-demographic information and like where people live. And so projects that are making improvements within equity priority communities or within areas where we know we have kind of a concentration of an underserved population, those projects get a point. Projects that are in proximity to existing transit and future smart stations get a point. So when we're helping to create that kind of walking or biking, low stress connection to those facilities, those projects get a point. Similarly, proximity to schools and colleges, making those connections, projects receive a point. When it overlaps with a regional priority, projects get a point. So as part of this active transportation plan creation, SCTA is identifying for Sonoma County regional routes that provide connectivity across the county and between different cities, different communities in an unincorporated area. And so the project overlaps with those regional routes, it gets a point. More broadly, MTC across the 9 Bay Area counties has identified their own regional active transportation network. And so if a project falls and overlaps with that network, can also get a point here. And then projects that create that low stress, so condition for people walking and biking, and that also fall in a priority kind of area for development or priority geography, get a point. And then finally, after our second round of engagement project where there's strong community support for implementation, can get an additional point. So all of these criteria are treated equally in this process. And the outcome, as I said, each project will then have a score. We sort those and we sort them into 3 tiers: tier 1, high priority; tier 2, medium priority; and tier 3, low priority. And roughly, I mean, the scoring kind of, and as we've done the draft implementation of this, what we've been looking for is, you know, kind of roughly a third of projects in each of those 3 tiers. So that's an overview of the draft prioritization approach. And so for those that are still with us this afternoon, wanted to create an opportunity for questions, discussions, and so forth. I put these 3 prompts up here, not realizing this group would probably already be ready to dive in with some ideas, but truly curious about if you, I mean, any clarifying questions, for sure, but places where you feel like maybe we're missing an important consideration in the prioritization. Would definitely appreciate hearing those thoughts as well.
And if
Jerry?
we could kind of focus in on
Sorry,
the
Dan.
prioritization feedback, that'd be great, given the time.
Jerry?
And that's specifically where I want to focus. That one criteria that I didn't see really explicit was volume, and that is utility. So, you know, a number of points for those routes that would get more people using that route. In one discussion or one set of routes that was once talked about, the question that somebody asked was, well, where am I going to? And who's going to use this? So utility is the one that I'd be looking at. And that's not explicitly there. And I think it's probably one of the major ones. If you want more people on active transportation, then you pick the routes that they're going to use most likely.
Give them a reason to use it.
Yeah.
There should be a reason to do it.
Yeah, exactly. And Rick asked the one question. I know Joe Rodota Trail, one time I was looking and the regulations say no electric vehicles on it. So electric bikes aren't officially allowed on these things. I think we need to have this examined.
Electric bikes and anywhere that regular bikes are.
But it sounds like.
There was a sign out there that says no.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
what I'm wondering.
Yeah.
So what do they mean by electric vehicles and if they have electric bikes?
Good comments.
That has to be explicit as well.
Yes.
Steve?
I'm curious as to how many projects we have in the mix. And are we looking at the federal funding availability? What do we know about how the dollars are going to flow?
Yes, a part of the implementation portion of the local plans and the regional plan will be to identify funding opportunities at the federal level, state, regional and local level. So that is part of this process. And the prioritization approach includes criteria that are relevant to many of those kind of federal and state, as well as SCTA's own criteria when they think about prioritizing funding for projects. So that's currently integrated. In terms of how many projects, we're still in draft form, but and we're really looking at it kind of by, city versus unincorporated county. So I think, when you easily within a city, we're seeing 100 or so projects, especially when you include sidewalk gap closures. So it's quite a few individual projects that cities are identifying in unincorporated counties. And probably about 500 to 700, depending upon how the next round of edits to their project list shakes out.
A lot.
It's a lot.
Thank you. Jake?
I'm just curious. This is a Sonoma County active transportation plan. Is there any connection with active transportation plans in the other 8 Bay Area counties? Is there any connection with MTC and their oversight of all of these plans? I guess something has escaped me since I've left MTC 4 years ago.
I could take that, Aaron, if you like. So we are looking at MTC's regional active transportation plan and included it as a layer in the prioritization process. So MTC has developed a network, Bay Area wide, where they would like to see prioritization of projects that are designed for all ages and abilities. So that low stress network. And we are using that as a layer in our prioritization process.
Thank you. Wilson?
Erin, under the safety criteria, will you be doing, or reviewing accident or injury data to identify, or prioritize project from the safety perspective?
We are using findings from SCTA's Vision Zero Action Plan, and then findings from most of the cities have a local road safety plan. Both of those things have been completed fairly recently. So in terms of, prioritizing projects with that safety criteria, those are the pieces of information that we're using. In the actual identification of like a project and that project's description, we're incorporating into that when it's appropriate, like if it's a crossing improvement, or kind of depending upon the nature of the project, incorporating into those safety countermeasures, for a given location. So those are kind of the two fundamental ways in which the safety is kind of influencing both project development and priorities. Then there will be policies that align with SCTA's Vision Zero Action Plan, specific to safety in the ATP as well.
Yeah, I know there's more questions, but we're 20 minutes over time, guys. So how late do you want to go here? Tom's got the first one.
So my count is that there are 8 points in your schema for criteria. And my concern is to be sure that we are actually reflecting the goals that we have when we count those points up. And then within each of those point categories, for example, in equity, while I appreciate the effort to be inclusive here and come up with lots of possible equity scoring criteria, the effect of that can be to dilute the most useful one. For example, as we see with the safety element discussion at the county general plan right now, we're allowing housing affordability right now as a proposed equity criteria, which means almost the whole county qualifies as an equity priority zone, which is a little, it's counterintuitive. It's against the actual objective that we're trying to accomplish. So the same principle I see perhaps in the equity list you have here. So I would ask you to take another look and to try to identify the equity criteria that is most relevant for transportation needs in our county, and not try to err in the being super inclusive of all the possible rubrics that are out there. That's the equity comment. On safety, I'm a little worried we might not be doing enough to elevate safety. Now, the Department of Health Vision Zero plan is a great place to start. And But if it's only 1 point granted to safety and then all these other proximity things, may not get us, we may end up diluting the intended goal of being safe in our ultimate plan. So I know you guys are thinking about this, but that's just some general feedback I have in looking over your criteria right now. And to Jerry's good earlier point about volume, I think you're trying to get that with proximity to school and proximity to existing future transit. The question is that proximity definition tight enough to really achieve the objective, Jerry? We all share. So hope that's helpful constructive feedback.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for sharing those thoughts.
Eris?
So mine has to do with, when we're looking at safety and that we've been, throughout Vision Zero and all those other programs, looking at where there are actual high injury, collisions or fatal collisions, but that somehow that doesn't capture the routes that are kind of where people would go, but we don't go because it's too dangerous. And so cyclists aren't getting run over, like say 116, right? We don't ride on 116 because it's too dangerous. So we're not out there getting killed. So it doesn't show up as a high injury network. Does that make sense? But I would ride to Sebastopol far more often if I could ride on or near 116 and not have to add an additional 5 miles going somewhere else. So I think there's, the near misses and the other things that get left out when high injury of existing users is the only criteria.
Yeah, I appreciate that and understand completely. Part of that is using the level of traffic stress as a proxy for safety. Recognizing that if it's a high level of traffic stress, most people won't choose to ride there, even if it is a route that has high utility. So that's definitely part of the consideration in identifying ways to close gaps in the network. And then in looking at recommending projects, we look at what's the posted speed and what kind of separation can we get for users based off of that posted speed. So anything above 25 miles per hour. I'm professionally strong proponent of trying to encourage agencies to get meaningful separation or slow vehicle speeds. So I appreciate those concerns and considerations very much.
So one last question. How well does this tie into the FTA's competitive grant projects for transit-oriented development?
I'm sorry, the FTA's what kind of?
Well, there was a program this morning on FTA's distribution of some $10 million for transit-oriented development projects. I'm curious whether this fits in with any of that.
Mr. Chair.
Is that something staff can come back to and reply to?
I can answer this quickly, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
So the FTA pilot program for transit-oriented development only applies for applicants that are receiving capital investment grants funding through FTA. Historically, no projects in Sonoma County have received that funds, and the only project that in the North Bay that's gotten those funds was the Smart Extension of Larkspur. So that we have no jurisdictions that are actually eligible for that funding source.
Doesn't work for us.
No, unfortunately.
Too bad.
Thank you. Dana, any wrap-up words? All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
All right.
Thank you.
Last but not least, we've got announcements.
I have.
Oh, we have a draft of a Board of Directors agenda.
Rosa sharing it, the draft that we have. At the moment.
Okay. And while we're doing that,
And I have one announcement. At the MTC Policy Advisory Council, they reviewed SB 1031, which is currently at the state level, and Dana was here, so I mentioned the report that you guys all pointed me to, and if that passes, At the Bay Area level, we'll be looking at a consolidated transit district. That's one of the possibilities, but at the very least, we'll have a study at least as complete as the study that was done here. And I suggested that the model, that the study that was done here should be the model for the study for the Bay Area, because that was a very good study.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, it's good that we still have optimists amongst
Innocence.
And with that,
Innocence.
we're adjourned. Thank you.
Not in my,
Yeah.
not in my.